Bill Harrison's passion for the law was derived through his father, W.T. Harrison Sr., who was a circuit judge in Florida for many decades. There's a lot of history in this building, though.
There is.
Bill Coppolino trial, F. Lee Bailey tried here.
Oh.
I want to talk about W.T. Harrison's connection to George Dietz. It was a mystical connection. They were each born on Tampa Bay, one on the south side in Manatee, the other one in Pinellas County in St. Pete. They became best of friends in law school.
Wow.
He had come out of law school after 5 years of undergraduate and law school in combination, and had an ROTC commission as a second lieutenant, and was sent to Korea as a field artillery officer. And while there, he connected with his old law school friend, George Dietz. They came back and began practice in Sarasota in adjacent offices for at least 5 decades.
Yeah.
They bought houses next to one another on 3 lots, and they split the one in the middle in half and made them into 2 lots.
Mm-hmm.
They had football tickets together. They could communicate without speaking. It wasn't a matter of completing each other's sentences. No, they could complete the entire thoughts.
They understood each other were
with just looking at
yes.
one another with a kind of a smile. And then when they died within weeks of one another, and they're buried about 9 feet apart at the Sarasota National Cemetery.
Bill loved all things Gator. You could say he bled orange and blue. He just was always a big fan of University of Florida. In fact, he was a double Gator. He went to undergrad and law school at the University of Florida, and he's a second-generation Gator. His dad graduated from law school, I believe, in 1912 at the University of Florida. I understand also that Bill played the piccolo in the marching band for the Gators back when he was an undergrad, and even returned for participating in the alumni band back in the 80s and 90s. Bill and George Dietz used to sit at every home game on the 50-yard line in the swamp. So pretty impressive credentials there as far as being a Gator. And I believe he even had an orange and blue van for a while there, so he really was committed. In addition, I was very much involved in Boy Scouts and was an Eagle Scout, and Bill was an Eagle Scout as well, but he really ascended the heights in Boy Scouts. He also received one of the top honors that an adult leader can get, and that is the Silver Beaver Award for community service and distinguished service.
I was always amazed with Bill as to his breadth of knowledge, whether it was the tax laws or it was something that would be related to trial or litigation. And many times people say they're a jack of many trades, a master of none. He was a master of them all. It amazed me how well versed he would be. He'd all of a sudden come up with a case, and I don't know where he got it from, his memory, his recesses in the memory, and by gosh, it was accurate. I remember as a young attorney, you have a tendency, particularly when we were dealing with, as you may recall, I came from Pricewaterhouse in my background and another international law firm after that. Coming here, we would get New York adversaries on a case, and I was always very ready to charge in, and he'd say, "Now, Rick, bide your time. You never put a man in a tree without giving him a rope to climb down." And when he first said that, I was like, now what does that mean? And as the years went on, the words he told me just became something really very, very prophetic and important to live by, because you didn't need to beat the heck out of your adversary. You tried to do it in a professional, gentlemanly. He was the epitome of a true gentleman to me.
Absolutely.
One of the most special things about Bill Harrison, to me, was that he made you feel like you're the most important person in the room. And I think he brought out the best in people. I remember one time talking with him about politics, something that I actually loathed, and I was trying to convince him that perhaps he should run for the state senate or any one of his partners. And then he turned to me and he said, I think you should run. And I was just like, no way. That is not my life. That is just something I could never do. And I just think he had this gift for making everyone feel or aspire to be better than they were themselves. He even, when I did decide to run for the Senate and had never in any of my wildest imaginings considered that, they hosted a get-together with some of their top people at the law firm, and that was just so generous and so kind. And gee whiz, I think I felt like if they believed in me, then perhaps I could do anything. And as long as they advised me on, some key issues that were really crucial, if I were at a crossroads, I felt that I would be fine.
I think I was in my new role for all of 2 weeks before a tricky community issue surfaced. So I called into Bill's office, and his assistant Becky put me right through. In less than 5 minutes, I'm in Bill's office, and I found out that Bill's a great listener, and his idea of providing advice was not to jump to the answer, but rather to engage in a discussion to kind of lead you down the right path. That was the first of many of these one-on-ones. And I'd set up these sessions, and I'd leave the bank and walk across Ringling Boulevard, and without fail, there's Bill Harrison propping open the back door to Williams Parker, waving me in, and always with that welcoming smile that we know and love.
Our dad was really a lawyer first and a rancher a close second.
Very close second.
And he had some property that he inherited with his brother George from their parents up in a parish. It's now been developed and is called the Harrison Ranch. But he used to take us up there as kids every Saturday morning. This is long before I-75, and it was quite a trek up there. And we would drive around for 2 or 3 hours and look at every cow and talk about every cow.
But we didn't always want to go. So he would always throw out incentives like, oh, we're going to look for bunnies, or we're going to fish for mollies in the creek and bring them home and set up a tank, or we'll go swimming in the, what was that?
The
big
well hole,
yeah, sulfur well hole. That water was disgusting, but we would go swimming in it.
Or bribe us with stopping at Kissing Cousins pancakes on the way
Yes.
home.
And wasn't he involved in the charter for the hospital? The
Yeah.
original
Yeah,
charter?
originally it was a city hospital, and the city didn't want the financial burden of it. So it became an independent district,
I see.
and they had to have a referendum for that. But he found himself being hospital counsel and airport counsel when he was still, I think, in his 20s.
He loved his dogs. I think his parents had a bunch of dogs. He loved hunting dogs his whole life. But at some point, the hunting dogs sort of evolved into becoming the family pets. And their sort of status in the family rose to pretty much the top of the class.
Higher than the 4 children. We had one dog that I just remember we just loved so much, Joe.
Joe was out hunting with my dad one Saturday morning, and we got a call that Joe had been struck by a rattlesnake. I found out, I was out actually trimming a palm tree in the front yard on the top of like a 12 or 14-foot ladder tied to the tree so that I wouldn't fall down, and my mom was holding the ladder. And the first thing I know is I look out, and my mom goes to answer the phone, and she's just flying out of the driveway, and I'm tied to the top of a palm tree. And I waved to her and asked her what's going on, and she told me, and I said, can you please just come untie me so I can get off the palm tree? And I went with her to the vet's office, and the prognosis was not good. The dog had been bitten by, Joe had been bitten by like a 6-foot rattler right on both sides of his nostril like this. And I think the prognosis was something like a very low percentage chance that the dog was going to survive. So my mom told the vet that if the dog doesn't make it, that my dad's not coming home. So he authorized the vet to have like 24-hour vet care. They had a tech there all night. And long story short, Joe made it through and came home.
And the vet loved to tell that story of when he asked my dad if money was an issue, and he goes, "No, my marriage is at stake."
He was a member of the American Law Institute, a very prestigious organization, very scholarly organization. And they're kind of leading edge in terms of best practices of different states and how they compile their laws.
And that they spend a lot of time, as you mentioned, sitting and looking at the law and trying to better the law for all the states as well as on a federal basis. And the members would pick various topics that were of interest, and they would do deep dives into this that would then ultimately influence the laws, influence in state and on a national basis.
He had no fear of alligators, which most people do. When the alligators got too big, they were nuisance gators, and they could call up the game warden, and they would come out and trap the gators. Well, one of the trappers had caught an alligator on a hook and pulled it in to the shore, and it was still alive. And the trapper was trying to get duct tape to wrap around the gator's snout, and asked my dad, who was in his late 80s at the time, if he could sit on the gator's tail while he duct taped the gator's mouth closed. And he did it.
And I remember when first we were in a meeting and he said, "Bill," and I went, "Oh, okay, Mr. Harrison." And he said, "No, Bill." And once you had earned that level of respect with him, you just, the relationship just blossomed. And I think for him, I was a fella coming from Miami in bigger cities, and he wasn't sure exactly how I'd fit into this small town, how I would approach it. And we ended up getting very close through the years. He was a confidant for me, somebody that I went to for mentoring, and not only in the law but also just in life, because he really served as a wonderful pole star of doing the right thing. And I think if you sum up Bill Harrison in many regards, it was a brilliant, humble man that always did the right thing. Maybe it wasn't perfect, but he always tried to do the right thing. And I think if many of us live by that today, this world would be a much better place. I miss that, and I think we've tried to carry that on and imbue that in this firm, so that it carries that type of attitude of each other being partners and putting the firm and each other first, not ourselves.
And the thing I guess I remember more about Bill than anything else is the ranch here. He loved that ranch. And we would go down, and he had cameras everywhere set up to see the animals, and we'd fishing, and I caught this gorgeous bass, and he said, "Well, you can't keep it." And I said, "Well, what's the point of fishing if I can't keep it?" And so he wouldn't let me keep any of the fish. He made me take them all. He made throw them all back in, because those are his fish. He would let anybody hunt on his place, because nobody was going to hunt. He didn't kill any of his animals. So he was a big animal lover, a big boater. He was a fun guy. He really was. He was a great friend, and he made the best cherry cobbler in the world. And every time we had dinner, I said, "You bring dessert." It was always cherry cobbler.
A couple years after our mom died, he was out after a big storm driving along the creek bed and saw what he thought was a really big bone sticking out of the creek bed. And I think he called you, Nancy.
Yep. He called me and he said, "I found a really big bone." And I'm like, "Well, you live on a ranch. Was it a horse bone, cow bone?" He goes, No, much bigger than that. And I'm like, "There's nothing bigger than a horse or a cow bone." And he said, "Well, I didn't get a chance to go over across the creek to really investigate it." He goes, "I'll check it out next weekend." So he went to work, went back the next weekend, and he drove his little UTV across the creek and got down to where it was a really steep bank. And he tied like a rope or something onto the UTV and rappelled down the side of the creek and retrieved this bone, sent a picture, and I had never seen anything like it before. And I posted it to some chat group or something on the internet, and somebody said, "Oh, that's a mammoth bone."
Yeah, so then he called me and we're just trying to decide what to do with it. So we decided to call the Department of Paleontology at the University of Florida, and they came down and took a look at it. So anyway, they said that if we donated the mammoth to the University of Florida, they would come down and completely excavate it. So it didn't take him long to say yes. I mean, what are we going to do with mammoth bones? But they came down and had a full-scale archaeological excavation and ended up 70% intact of one individual mammoth. So the University of Florida was pretty excited about it, and everybody got to go out and participate in the dig. And
11,000 years old.
So the other part about Bill Harrison that I find is a fascinating juxtapositioning is this is a man who understood politics, he understood Florida, he understood ranching, he was a rancher, but he also loved opera. So when you put in those combinations of opera, philanthropy, arts, culture, leadership, politics, what a force. But one of the parts about Bill Harrison is he was not a man of many words. He was a man of carefully selected words shared at the appropriate moment. So you learned that while Bill Harrison might be quiet during a meeting, when he decided to talk, it was the right time with messages that were well worth the listen.
He was a brilliant, thoughtful, generous man, and we miss him.
I'd like to invite Bill Harrison III to come forward and speak on the family's behalf.
Good evening. I'm Bill Harrison III. Thank you for being here tonight. Our dad passed away sort of right at the height of COVID, so this is the first time that we've really had the chance to see a lot of old and dear friends. I'd also like to thank the Argus Foundation. I've learned that just a tremendous amount of work goes into making this event happen each year. I'd like to acknowledge I've got my 3 siblings, spouses, 6 grandkids, 1 spouse and 1 soon-to-be spouse sitting down over here. We'd like to thank Williams Parker, of course, for being a presenting sponsor tonight. Williams Parker was the only law firm that our dad ever worked for starting back in 1953. But only with a little twist of fate. My dad actually accepted an offer with a law firm in Bartow out of law school, but then he was drafted for the Korean War the week after graduation. After returning from the war, he made the decision to move to Sarasota and come and work for J.J. Williams, and that's sort of the start of the story. I attended this event for the first time 7 years ago. When I told my dad that I was coming down from Tampa for the dinner, I remember him telling me what an honor and really big deal it was to receive this award, and I received a full briefing on all the wonderful things that the Argus Foundation does for the Sarasota community. My dad would be honored to receive the Lifetime Achievement Award, and our family is honored to accept it on his behalf. Looking back at the past honorees, everyone was a part of shaping Sarasota into the special place that has become today. There's certainly great honor for our dad to be included in this group. We would also like to congratulate John Swift. Our dad loved everything about Sarasota. He loved his family, his firm, his friends, the community, the culture, the outdoors, and as you can see from the video, his many beloved dogs. In fact, if you opened up his refrigerator, you would typically find a Morton's tenderloin for the dogs and cold cuts for everyone else. That is true. We wish our dad were here to accept this award in person, but we are humbled and honored to accept this award on his behalf. Thank you once again.
On behalf of the Argus Foundation, it's my honor to present to the family the Argus Foundation Lifetime Achievement Award for the life's work of Bill Harrison. He was really a great man. Congratulations again to the Harrison family. It's the pleasure of the Argus Board of Directors to recognize your father and grandfather. He was an amazing man, and we appreciate him being here. Thank you for accepting the award on his behalf.